Hello and welcome to Jeep Up Gaming. I've made a few videos now on my figure collection and thought it was time to remember the first figures I bought back in 1981 or 1982, I can't remember, but before I'd started playing D&D and Traveller. The first figures I bought, among the first things I'd ever bought myself of value to me in my life, was when I was about 11 years old, and I thought it was really extravagant to do it. But actually I realised from looking into this that I must have got this all wrong. So please bear with me. These were the first figures I remembered I'd bought in my collection. I'd started playing Car Wars a few months before, which was the first RPG I'd ever played. The movie Mad Max 2 had just come out in 1982, and my mate, who was Australian, so I think he'd seen or heard about the movie and the world it was set in long before he'd introduced this game to me, described Car Wars in a similar way to the scene in Star Wars where they're flying towards the opponent, guns blazing, and then you're flying through the explosion of the other car. That really caught my imagination, you know, just like in the Star Wars scene with the fighters. My mate had been to Games Workshop before I had, and took me there, and I think I bought the first edition Car Wars game as well. Be offensive, and the right away goes to the biggest guns is what it says on the cover. You know, brilliant. So first edition Car Wars was a vehicle combat simulation game developed by Steve Jackson Games. You know, it's first published in 1980, and players drove armed vehicles in a post-apocalyptic future. Really good, really exciting, really worked well, very simple. You know, always ended up different to what I expected, and you know, just a lot of fun. And then there was Sunday Drivers, and the Truck Stop, and Auto Duel Champion. So these were all the extras that just made it into this epic game with these little pieces of cards mostly. So I think I bought the car figures because I think just because of playing the game, but I just really enjoyed playing with the card figures, to be honest. And they would introduce little fiddly little people as well. But you know, just really good fun, worked really well, very simple, you know, great stuff. So I tried looking online to see where the car figures were from, and they, you know, straight away I could see they weren't from Car Wars. You know, I couldn't find anything. And then I remembered that my mate had bought the Games Workshop online game called Battle Cars. So that was on the Spectrum 48K, I think it was, in 1984. So I think I was about 13 then. And yeah, that was very exciting as well. You know, it's very, you know, now it just looks comic, but you know, but I'd you know, by that I was an old hand, basically RPG hand, so you know, even then I still found it really exciting. So that was called Battle Cars, it wasn't Car Wars. So in 1983 Games Workshop, you know, was off the back of Car Wars. They were trying to create their own board game, so called Battle Cars. And as a gamer, you know, by that time I was like, I've been playing, you for a long time. It just never registered as anything more than just Car Wars rip-off. But the Spectrum game was definitely something I remembered and enjoyed. But I saw it as a Car Wars game, really. So when I looked at Battle Cars, I realised that actually I'd got it all wrong. I must have got these figures much later. They weren't the first figures I got. I must have bought them, maybe 3 years later, because they're Battle Cars. So I looked at Battle Cars, and these are my figures here. But it's interesting. I mean, Games Workshop, they persevered, because they came back in about 5 years later. So looking through my White Dwarf collection, you can see Games Workshop really tried to tie in a comeback with there's a hell of a lot of figures involved with it as well. So very interesting. So like issue 100 of White Dwarf, the April 1988 edition of White Dwarf, on page 6 it's titled Highway Warriors, forthcoming untitled game of the near future. So they were trying to bring it back at this point, and then 2 issues later, like issue 102 in June 1988, White Dwarf, page 33, Dark Future Battle Cars. The ones on page 36, or the car on page 36, looks a bit like my miniature. And then again, issue 104 in August, page 68, Dark Future it was advertised in Thrud, so it's in the Thrud cartoon, which was a bit desperate, I think, but anyway, so they really tried to bring it back again, and this time with huge amount of figures. So it was very interesting that what I thought were my first figures, because I figured I played Car Wars before I played any other RPG game, but in fact it turns out they weren't even Car Wars figures. But I really did enjoy Car Wars. I thought the Games Workshop computer game Battle Cars was excellent as well, so I won't knock it, but I'll have to go back and have a look again and see which of my figures were the first ones I ever bought. So I'll do another video on that, but these definitely weren't them, because I think I must have bought these in like 1984 maybe, just as a whim, just because of remembering of Car Wars, and I wanted something to remember those by, but by then it was all Dungeons and Dragons and Traveller by then, but good times anyway. Thank you very much for listening.